We are tonight's entertainment.
You can't handle the truth.
The fire rises.
Pizza time.
You're a wizard, Harry.
So it begins.
You know how much I sacrifice?
You think that's air you're breathing?
Groovy.
I don't have friends. I got family.
We are sex people! 1, 2, 3, 4!
Craft Services.
Hey, Trent.
Hi, Parth.
It's good to see you.
Likewise.
You're looking well.
Oh, thank you. What have you been eating?
Well, Trent, yesterday my mother came to my door and said, Parth, I'm going grocery shopping. You should come with me. And I was like, okay. Because I just hate shopping. But I also, when I'm around the house, have recently been complaining, not to my mom, but to myself, and to friend of the show, Sophia Alexis, that there's no snacks in the house, there's no food that I want in the house, and it's just upsetting, you know, when you want like a granola bar and there's just no granola bars, when you want a cookie and there's no cookie. So I went to ShopRite with my mother yesterday and we bought a whole bunch of stuff. A lot of them were breakfast items that I wanted, and one of such items were a pack of 6 blueberry crumble muffins, one of which I had today.
Crumbly. So ultimately it seemed like you had some reservations about going grocery shopping with your mom, but was it fulfilling? Like,
oh, it was, I even knew like before that I would ultimately it would ultimately be good for me to go, but it's the kind of thing where it's just like, it reminds me of being a little kid, where you're just like forced to go along. And when I was a kid, I mean, even as an adult, I like wander. Like if my mom is shopping, I never liked just walking right by her. I always just was like, well, I just kind of would walk over here and look at that and maybe do this thing and whatever. And so when I was a kid, it would frustrate my mom because she'd just be like, Parth, just stay where you are. Like, just, I don't know where you are, and then I lose you. And so I think since then, I've developed a dislike towards shopping because I'm just like, I just have to stand there. That sucks.
There's so many different directions we could go with this. But yeah, trying to shop with someone else is difficult because it's like everyone consumes the store at their own rate. And then it's like when one person's done, they're expected for the other person to be ready to go.
Which is why I like shopping with Sophia, because the two of us walk and move at a similar pace, I feel.
So I have to ask, was listing a sort of grocery list, being like, hey, can you hit me with some granola bars, some blueberry muffins, and some cookies, was that an option? Not to put the unnecessary burden on your mother, and I'm sure you had some nice bonding time, but my parents have adopted, like, grocery list on the fridge. You want something, you write it, a few days later, it'll just appear. It's crazy.
You see, Trent, Sophia Alexis' family employs the same method. But my family has never used a real grocery list, where it's usually my mom will be like, well, I'll know when I go to the grocery store and see it.
Wow.
Which causes problems.
She's like a talent scout. She's like, I don't trust the statistics. I just know talent when I see it.
She's like the old heads in Moneyball.
Yeah, well, I was about to reference that too.
Not to call my mother an old head, but but my parents have never really used because what I think most people have is they have the grocery list and you write down the list or whatever and then they go buy it. That's not what my parents do. And it never really has been. They just sort of randomly get what they think they'll need. Which my mom does get what she needs, but then it causes problems when you're like, well, I would have liked that. I would have liked that. And then my mom's like, right, but that's why I want you to come. So, you know.
I see the pickle you're in.
Yeah.
Speaking of pickles, just fun fact, my dad entered his pickles. He makes cucumbers in the garden, and he entered the pickles into the Monmouth County Fair. That's the county we live. And he won first place.
Wow. Congratulations, Mr. Kurt Algair. Speaking of Kurt Algair's pickles, I was promised a jar of spicy pickles way back in 2020 or 2021.
Before they were award-winning?
Yes.
There's multiple jars in the fridge as we speak, and I've been tasked with watering the garden every morning since they're visiting my sister in Michigan. But the pickles are firing away here. And Parth, if you ever come over, you're on... I said this to my dad. I was like, you can only bring up the fact that you make pickles to so many people because everyone's natural response is like, oh, you've got to get me a jar. And 9 times out of 10, I mean, it's really small batches. Like, there's probably only like 10 or 20 jars a season. So, like, we'd have to really be close friends for like that to be a possibility. But Parth, we're nearing episode 200 of this podcast. So I'd like to say that.
Yeah, we're pretty close friends.
If you come over, like, we can throw some pickles in your direction.
Yeah, well, it's sort of like, I think pre-episode 150, it was sort of a... Post-episode 100, it was a toss-up between 1 and 150. Post-150, I think it's like, all right, I deserve the pickles now, if I come.
But we went to the fair, and he took a picture with his blue ribbon, and he wore a cowboy hat, and then we saw, like, an acrobat, and racing pigs, and a guy juggling, and... It was kind of pretty fun.
Trent, have you said what you've eaten most recently yet?
No, I went to a street fair yesterday. This is a separate incident. My car got towed. That's a separate incident too. But at the street fair, I bought a Jamaican coconut rum cake that I had bought years ago at a Collingswood flea market. Separate incident. But George was like, you have to try this. And I like brain blasted Jimmy Neutron. And I was like, oh, I have had this. And it was seriously one of the best things I've ever had. And it's just like a really sugary cake. It's coconutty. So I bought one. And then my car got towed, as I mentioned. Picked it up this morning, $250 later. And then I had some coconut rum cake. And then drinking some iced tea. That's that on that.
I figured now's as good a time as any to cue the intro. Welcome back to Craft Services, where we talk about the movies. Each week we talk about a film and hopefully have a crew member of that film to talk with us about their experience working on the picture. Trent, I'm feeling... Whoa, you're kind of going all around like you're feeling all twisty, huh?
For those who can't see, which is literally everyone but Parth, I was spinning around in my spinny chair. Like a freaking tornado, bro.
Whoa, and if I were here, I would do it with you so that there were 2 of us. Twins!
Yeah,
it's Twisters week.
We amused ourselves by doing that a few times throughout the interview. Or I shouldn't say we, more like me. Or did you, or are you?
I think at the end I went twins. Yeah,
thanks for incriminating yourself as well.
This week we're talking with production designer Patrick Sullivan about his work on Lee Isaac Chung's Twisters. Super cool guy. Worked on quite a few movies.
Yeah, quite a few movies that we'll mention in a second, so there's no reason to mention them by name. But as just fun fact, as we'll mention, sort of abundantly
at the beginning
of
the episode.
Yeah, he also worked on the original Twister, which is super cool, and he said he's like on the short list of people who's worked on both. So I don't even think we knew that until shortly before the interview. And so more of a reason that Patrick Sullivan was like the most qualified, awesome Twisters guest we could possibly dream of or hope to have on our humble show.
That's what I would say.
Yeah, word for word.
Yeah, thank you so much to Patrick Sullivan for coming on. And should we just cue the interview? Hello, everybody, and welcome to our interview with Patrick Sullivan. He's the production designer behind such films as Gerald's Game, Brightburn, and our film for today, Lee Isaac Chung's Twister. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Twisters, plural.
Yes. Right? Wait, did I say Twister?
Yeah,
no.
Like they weren't twins.
Oh no,
but they are part.
Which is fine because I did the first one as well. So
I know we're gonna get to that.
Oh my god, I cannot believe I did that. Well, wow, I'm really off my game now.
Lee Isaac Chung's movie name what?
Twisters.
There you go.
Thank you so much for being with us today. So just to start off, what was your relationship with film like at a young age?
Always loved film. It was funny. I grew up so far away in Pennsylvania, so long before internet connection and social media and like instant connection to information. All I got from movies was watching them and reading magazines about people who made them, which was the other side of the country. So it was never, I'd like to call a pipe dream, but it felt far away, literally far away and figuratively. But I wanted to do something in movies, but I had to discover what that was. So I studied architecture and was just insane about going to movies every Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, all that. Whenever something new came out that caught my eye, I'd look at old movies with my dad that he loved, and Night of the Hunter, or even, getting into things like, Towering Inferno and things like that. But always loved movies. I just never knew how to break in or what to do. And just started doing my research and found out that architecture was a good way in, that production designers are basically architects for the movies. So I always loved architecture. So I said, all right, I'll go to school for that and then see what happens next. And that's how it went.
Can you talk about sort of finding yourself on set for the first time, maybe after you graduated?
Yeah. Again, since I studied architecture, I immersed in that, and I worked for architects since high school. So by the time I was graduated into the profession, I was almost jaded, and I was like, all right, I need something less conventional. I need something, a little more creatively exciting. So when I eventually moved to LA, I just hit the trades. Back in the day, it was the Hollywood Reporter, and it was the Tuesday edition, had all the production listings. And the one guy I was seeking out was Joseph Nemec. And he had just production designed The Shadow with Alec Baldwin. And I was a huge fan of that movie. And I was like, that guy was an architect who became a designer. So I looked him up, and he was working on Wild Bill at the time, the Jeff Bridges film. And he took the time. He took the time to talk to me and give me advice and insights. It was really inspiring, and we hit it off well. It's just the union thing was the obstacle. I just got to town, so I couldn't really work with him. But then I just started talking to other people, and I found myself the very first movie set I was ever on was Crimson Tide, the submarine bridge. Yeah, and I got invited. Everybody was very open and helpful and generous, and giving me great insights and connections to other people. And I found that that's just the way the nature of the business is. It's sort of pay it forward. And everybody was great. So one of the guys I met on there was Jim Murakami. And then he became my mentor, one of my mentors as well. And I went through his career as it progressed, and I became his art director eventually. But he took me to the bridge. It was on a gimbal, the Crimson Tide submarine, and I sat in it, and I was just hooked. I was like, this is make-believe. It's pretty cool. So yeah, it's pretty awesome.
We sort of briefly mentioned it due to my slip-up, but you worked on the first Twister, just the one film.
I did.
Could you talk about getting on set for that and working on that as, I believe, a set designer?
Yeah, that was exactly it with Joseph Nemec. He gave me all the time in the world. And I was working on a small non-union film that was turning union. So it was my impetus to call him again and say, guess what? I'm going in the union now. If you want to give me a shot, this is your chance. And he was prepping Godzilla with Jan de Bont, and during that time it shut down. And when it shut down, they just slid everybody over to Twister. And Joe came on board as designer, and then he had his art director give me a call and say, do you want to go to Oklahoma and Iowa for a little while? I was like, yeah. So that was my first union movie, was that.
Wow.
And yeah, I left to go do that long before I even got sworn in officially to the union. So I was brand spanking new, junior set designer for that.
And how long was that shoot for you?
That was March. I started the week after St. Patrick's Day in '95, and it was great. I stayed all the way till they wrapped the late August, which is unheard of, really. And I didn't know it at the time, but to be a set designer where you're drawing sets that then have to get built, that then have to get dressed and shot, it's like, that doesn't make sense that I'm on till the end, but it was fantastic. And I think it's because I sort of became a de facto, I don't want to say the title, but I was art directing. So I was handling sets, kind of overseeing them while they were being shot, which was a great training ground. And I just credit Joe Nemec for giving me that opportunity and trusting me.
Were you one of the few people involved with both films? or is there a short list of other people similar to you?
Exactly right. There is a short list, and I can name a bunch of them, but I can't name them all. Obviously, Dorothy, which is the device, but 1 through 4 on the first film. But living beings, it was myself, Ben Snow, who was the visual effects supervisor, pretty much all the coordinators you see. He was an ILM, either matte artist or compositor, but young like myself. And then Amanda Brand, and we had a sound guy who came on later on Twister and then continued on. So it was them, and I'm thinking they're the only ones that come to mind now are those few people. Yeah, we were the legacy bunch pretty much.
Can you talk about sort of how was it happenstance that you were asked to work on Twisters as well, or can you just sort of talk about how it came to be that you were asked to work on Twisters as well?
It was a very peculiar set of events, but I honestly say it helped me survive, because I don't think I could have watched this film get produced and made and released and not be a part of it. It was just so integral to my career. But it just so happened that Isaac, the director, had gone to college. His wife had gone to college with my wife at Yale. And they stayed in touch, and they were kind of in touch, and they know that each of their respective husbands worked in the film business. And then we just had a lunch one day in Pasadena. And it was funny, we did not talk about Twisters at all. We did not talk about just talked about movies in general. He had done Miari, and he knew that I had a decent resume, and we just talked about our projects respectively, and had a great lunch and hit it off, and then went our separate ways. And then like a week later, my agent called me. She says, "I have a script for you." And I was like, "What?" And she said, "Twisters." I was like, "Get out of here. That's pretty fantastic." So, I'd worked on all different genres and all different job positions and all different budget ranges. But, a lot of times in Hollywood, they kind of peg you. You only work on big budget movies. You only work on small budgets. So I worked very hard to challenge myself in all the different ways I can be. So I was hoping that it primed me. I didn't see this coming. I didn't really see it coming from a long way off, but I just felt like it was just good fortune. And when they opened the door for me to at least meet on it, that's all I had. At that point, it was just, you got the script, you're going to do your pitch, you're going to do your vision for it, and see how it goes, and see how people respond. Isaac, the studio, all of that, and one initial meeting led into more, and then eventually I got a call saying, "You've got it," and I was just like flying, and it was pretty amazing. Pretty cool.
Sort of speaking on your pitch, once you got the job, what kind of materials were you creating as like pre-production work for the movie? Like, were you creating lookbooks, or what were you doing? Yeah,
initially the one that helped get me the job in terms of the process of talking with different people about it was my lookbook. And my initial lookbook was enough to kind of spark everything, and then it grew from there. And then I get feedback and dialogue with Isaac about what he sees it, and then it evolves mine and becomes a pure collaboration. Once I came on board, it was an interesting thing because of the idea that we were in Oklahoma and we needed to be. They wanted to keep a small footprint there for as long as possible to try to keep the cost down, which was fine with me because I was the pioneer. I was the sort of trailblazer, and it was me in the art department as the art department grew. So I was going from my home in Denver at the time, and then to Oklahoma City, and then to LA. So I was doing that back and forth, and sort of like scouting locations, finding locations, developing logistics, and developing the look of the film as it kind of came into focus with what we were finding there, and then taking it back to Isaac, and we'd have our meetings, and it would just kind of develop like that. I credit my supervising art director, Owana Bogdan Miller. She was fantastic and got me the big art department we needed, because the film was a pretty big scale, and it's just a matter of finding the things we needed and knitting it all together. And it had many logistical challenges, but nothing that I didn't just love every day. It was, all of that was a blast to do, and a lot of fun. And it was such an amazing experience because everybody was so top notch, ahead of the top of their game and professional, that it was just a pro experience, top to bottom.
Can you tell us when you made the leap from set designing to production designing? Just because similar to like the non-union union situation, you need like a little bit of luck and a little bit of weirdness to make that transition.
Yeah, it definitely was a lot of luck, but I don't know whether I'm one person who says you make your own luck. I just happened to be talking to the person who knew the person that led me to this person and all of that. So the timeline for me was ridiculous. I landed in Los Angeles like August of 94. And by March of 95, I was on the biggest movie being made at the time, the original Twister. And I'm standing in a cornfield in Iowa going, what did I do? But I ended up meeting someone who knew somebody, and I got working on a film basically for free. And I was their de facto set designer. It was a non-union film called White Man's Burden. And it turned union. I was already done, and then I heard it was turning union. And since I was on already, I just was able to use that as my days, and that's how I got in. And how I actually got to meet Joe Nemec in person, just so because the industry is so small, the art department coordinator on that film knew Joe Nemec's wife, who was Joe's actual art department coordinator. So she's like, "You want to meet Joe? Well, I know Joe and Carla. You can meet Joe." And next thing I know, I'm sitting across from him, and that's when we finally met face to face and talked. And then he got me on the show, and next thing I know, I was handed my ticket back in the day when you get handed paper tickets, So it's a whole different world then.
Sort of speaking on that original Twister again, it's just funny because we have someone that worked on both. Were you using that at all in your prep?
Yeah, it definitely came into play. What I didn't want to do is felt like I had a very small bag of tricks. Like I just wanted to keep talking about that all the time and leaning on that. Everybody knew that I worked on it. It was a fun novelty that I had. But I was able to draw on knowing the locality of the whole thing. I knew all the towns all over the place, and I knew the kind of terrain where it was like greener on the east and a little browner on the west, and the vertical, highway dividing everything and going from Norman to Oklahoma City to Enid, Ponca City, all of that. That definitely helped. And, for a brief moment, they were talking about shooting it in Georgia. Would have been horrifically tragic to try to turn that into it. But when we knew we were settled there, I was like, I'm back in my element. I'm back in the heartland. I'm back in this amazing place. And it was very nostalgic. And I think that inspired me. I think, the key tenets to what I was trying to capture was the nostalgia and understand and respect what the first film meant culturally to a lot of people. And now with social media, people are crazy about Twister, and it's a cult classic and people watch it hundreds of times. And I knew there was responsibility in that. And I just felt like knowing and getting what was good about that film and knowing that we needed to try to capture that same spirit and feeling was key to it. And then the whole culture of storm chasing and how it evolved, and knowing what it was then and knowing what it is now. Like Reed Timmer, he's like the guy, and I don't even know if he was like in diapers then, but he, it was a fledgling kind of thing that grew out of this. And so many people saying, I became a storm chaser because of Twister. And I was like, that means a lot. And it means a lot to us going about doing this. And then really just trying to capture that place and really embrace that place and not make it incidental to what we were trying to do, but integral. We sort of like wanted to make it like if Terrence Malick were to make Twisters, to that vistas, those visuals. That was an important part. And I realized that I didn't really answer the question before where I got from set designer all the way. So I can jump into that if you like, or we can.
Please.
Sure. How you became your first production designer job?
Yeah, my first production design job was, what would be officially the very first? I think it was a crazy film, David Zucker, called American Carol. I was art directing, which was a very right-wing political funny thing, but working with Zucker was a treat in itself, his sense of humor and all. But I was working as art director under Jim Murakami on Changeling, the Malpaso Clint Eastwood film. And the producer on that at the end, he goes, "Are you ready to design?" And I was like, well, you mean? And he just says, I'm going to slide right into this other film. And it was a very strange meeting because he says, I'm going to have you go over and meet David Zucker over in Santa Monica. And, I said, well, can I read the script first? He goes, yeah. And he gave it to me. And I thought I was going in to pitch for the movie, but I didn't realize till about halfway through that David thought I was the guy. I was handed the project. So it was a bit awkward to go, oh, okay. I thought I was really like trying to get this, but, so I had it, and it was a big challenge. We were okay for money, but I had to finally go, it's like flying solo for the first time. You get up in the air and you're like, it's up to me to get this thing back on the ground. And I just had to just say, you know what, I'm ready. I know what I know what I know, but I also know what I need to learn and just get better at. And I relied on my team, and it's all about being decisive, and it's all about being confident in your decisions. And it worked out all right. It was good.
So Twisters, I feel like I can't think of a like better example of a movie where like the design meets the visual effects, and like the visual effects are basically absorbing the design at all times. And I was just wondering, with you as the production designer, if you could speak a little bit on like your relationship with your design being constantly interacted with visual effects.
No, I appreciate you saying that, because oftentimes people just assume it was all VFX. They don't know where it is, and the fact that it's seamless is to me a compliment. I agree that it's a heavy visual effects film, but it did require interaction. And what was important to me was I wanted to give them aftermath where they didn't need to digitally extend it. So when they're on the ground and you're looking at all that destruction, that's all there. And even if you look down the street in all directions, because a tornado has a path, so it's okay to have it end. It isn't like, destruction for as far as the eye can see. But I was able to do that, and they were grateful for that because they had plenty of work to do with the actual tornadoes themselves and flying debris and flying objects and all of that. But it was very close interaction in terms of understanding each like level of tornado, because as they describe in there, it's about the damage it does. It's not about size or wind speed. It's about the aftermath. And they come in and they gauge the size of the tornado by looking at what happened, what kinds of things happened. So it was very important to kind of create those beats and those elements, even though they weren't necessarily story points at the time. I wanted those clues to be visible throughout. And we needed visual effects in a lot of places because of large scale actual destruction in camera. Special effects couldn't even do that. They might start to lift a roof, but the actual disintegration of it and carry away in the atmosphere and all that, visual effects took over. So it was sort of a mix of visual effects, special effects with Scott Fisher and myself. So I was basically creating prosthetics where I'd finish a building that was there, but I would do a destroyed end so I can easily just dismantle the piece that we built and expose the sort of guts of the building. So you have to understand construction, which is where my architecture came in. It wasn't scenery. We had to actually make these buildings look like they were put together like a real building, because they were gonna have their guts exposed, more or less. So, but it was every single scene and sequence was its own set of challenges and things to work out with them. But it was all pretty seamless and a lot of fun.
Speaking on collaboration with other department heads, what kind of collaboration was there between you and Dan Mindell, the cinematographer? Oh, Dan was, aside from the fact that he's a total hoot, he's an amazing character and a sweet guy. Super talented. I never worked as a designer. I never worked with him, but I realized that I had worked with him in the capacity. I was an assistant art director on Enemy of the State, and he was the DPO on that. He was amazing. It was all collaboration. So during the pre-production process, when I'd go to LA, he was in LA, and we talk about that. So it was really about the vistas and the colors and the lensing. And an interesting thing about the palette, Isaac really wanted to nail that down, that sort of faded Americana, and Dan weighed in about, the natural light and how the skies are going to change, and, how to maintain continuity with that and not be beholden to that.
So we looked at, different kinds of horizons, whether they were open or treed, if they were dense vegetation or, wide open plains. But I tried to also shoot locations as the camera might see them. And I always cropped all my images in that way so that, you could get those beautiful, like, gray blue skies, and you got the golden wheat, and then you got the orange road, and all of that. So being able to see the graphic potential of it when he wasn't there initially, it sort of is where he got his first images from as to what the potential of the place was. But things like helping me with the vehicles, the vehicles, kludged them up and got all the gack on them and all of that. But his idea, we knew we needed lights inside, but he had this idea to put on all the corners and all the heads. He cranked up the idea of the LED lights everywhere, which is really cool looking because, quite honestly, I didn't think of that. But in daylight, I'm like, what do you need lights for? But if you see it cruising down the road, you see all those pops all in the different corners of the framework and everything, and it really helped it. No, that was great. But he was an amazing collaborator and a real sweet guy, and a pleasure to work with.
In the past, talking to production designers, we've picked up on the fact that your job is like always operating one step ahead of where they're shooting. You're always working on the next set. Yeah. And I was just wondering sort of about the mechanics and like the chain of command of like if you're drawing the blueprints and who you're handing it off to say, like, get this done. And like you and your team get this done. And if you just talk about, that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's sort of an extension of your original question, going from a set designer to a production designer. I was sort of had this curse of self-awareness. I never wanted to get to the next job level until I knew for sure I was awesome at the previous job. So I was a set designer and then a senior set designer. And then I became an assistant art director and an art director and then a supervising art director on a bigger movie and then ultimately designer. But in a mix of all that, I did concept illustrations and I did graphic design and all. So I kind of knew what every job was in the art department as a designer. So it was easy to delegate. And so a film of this scale, I'm working most directly with the producer, the director, and the cinematographer and choosing locations with the location manager and finding them. And then kind of working out the logistics of what it's going to take to turn this location into what we need to suit the action or to decide to extract something from that and decide to build a set. So from there, I would sort of do my initial reference and research. I might often do a sketch or a quick 3D model of something, but it's very rudimentary. It's just about the way the action is going to work in it and the overall feel and style of something. And then it goes to my supervising art director. And then again, because this was such a diverse film in so many places, she then assigned it to a particular art director who handled, say, El Reno. So we had an art director who handled the trolley in El Reno, the movie theater, the farmer's market, the baseball field, and going all the way into the theater. Now, when we get into the theater, that became a set build back on stage. But because it was connected to his world and that kind of vocabulary and everything, we just made it all his. So that was handling that. Then the farmhouse was another art director and the vehicles was a full-time job. But for me at that point, I have a hand in the seeds of what it all looks like and make sure it's a cohesive vision. And that's the most important thing. And it satisfies the director's vision as well. But then I just kind of oversee it and just sort of troubleshoot and ask questions, answer questions at that point and go, do my rounds and take a look at everything. But the art directors themselves are the day-to-day, and then they report in, and then they, get their questions answered or raise concerns or problems. Like one art director handled the rodeo in the motel because they were actually right across the street from each other. So that was all of theirs. But I would do my visits to all the places during the course of a week. I'd probably visit all the sets that are underway at that time.
You spoke a little bit about how the movie was originally potentially going to shoot in Georgia, and I was kind of wondering how far along were those plans, and why did the shift happen from Oklahoma to Georgia back to Oklahoma? And then, if you could just sort of talk on that.
Yeah, it wasn't really, really far along. It was early in the process. I had just started on the show, and we knew we were going to scout the Wednesday after I started, and we were going to start in Georgia to take a look at it. I think the studio just said, take a look at it. Obviously, there's tax incentives, there's financial benefit to going there. But knowing that this is a tentpole film, we knew it was sort of like, we're not going to find it. We're not going to. And then it became, the studio. And Isaac spoke of this in certain interviews where he said, okay, you can shoot. Because it was really, really important to Isaac for authenticity. He's from Arkansas, Western Arkansas. He really knows Oklahoma. And from his experience, he just wanted to be real. He didn't want to try to turn another place into it because it just makes it sort of illegitimate, I think. So on a film like this, it's so vitally important that it's Oklahoma. So all they said was, go take a look at it, cursory check, show that it doesn't work, and then let's hit the ground running. And then, after like 3 days, it was like, there's no Georgia in it. It's Oklahoma. So then they said, okay, well, it might be more expensive. So you might lose some shooting days, and you might lose some visual effects shots, and just try to compact it. So it was all about that. And it ended up being like a 55-day shoot, first unit, which sounds crazy short for a film of this scale, but almost the entire shoot, there was a second unit going with vehicles and every stunts and everything like that. So we really were about a 100-day shoot, which is pretty much what the first film was. So it's just the way it's split up. But it was not really a question ultimately that we were not going to shoot in Oklahoma. It was always going to be the case.
Parth, that part one of that interview was freaking sweet, bro. Am I crazy?
Yeah. No. I'm shaking in my boots from how good that was.
There's gotta be more. There's gotta be more.
Well, Trent, it's like
You're
in Twister.
telling me
You
there's
see
not
Twister.
more?
You see Twister, and you're like, that was good, but I want more. Turns out there's Twisters. There's twins. And much like Twisters, our episode has a twin. Though it's not identical because it's part two
it's
of
a
this
fraternal
conversation.
twin. Yeah, so if this week, think of like that one pair of twins from your high school, not the pair of identical twins, the other pair of fraternal twins, the one that's the boy and the girl. Think of them. So it's like that.
Think of Morgan and Michael Winchuk.
Fran and John Lavelle, really just like choose whoever from your high school applies to help you better understand the fact that last week was Twisters part one with production designer.
Trent, these fraternal twins of yours, which would you say was this episode, and which twin would you say is part two?
So I think Fran Lavelle has got to be this week's episode, part one with Patrick Sullivan, production designer. Next week is probably going to be John Lavelle, who's the fraternal twin. What you're going to notice is they're a little different. But they're also a little bit alike, and also they go to your high school.
Yeah,
and sometimes they're in your class, and sometimes both of them are in your class. Confusing.
Oh. Sometimes as a joke, when I meet fraternal twins, I like to go identical. If they're a boy and a girl. It's a funny joke to me. Pretty much only to me. Everyone else goes,
that's impossible.
But you stupid fuck. And I'm like, yeah, I know. It's called a joke.
Did you know that, like, just while we're here, the conjoined twins that like they show you like the videos about in like science class, that like they're famous. Like
I know who you're talking about.
They had to pay 2 separate college tuitions, and now their job only pays them 1 salary.
That's bull.
Right?
That's bull. That's fucked up.
That's America right there in a nutshell.
Yeah, sure. Well, while we're on that, thank you so much, Patrick Sullivan, for coming on. We're going to continue our conversation with you.
Perfect segue.
Perfect segue. Thank you so much for coming on. We'll continue our conversation next week, and you can catch that episode anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Pandora, wherever really you listen. And please make sure to...
Yeah, and wherever you do your social media-ing, you're going to want to media your way on over to Instagram and or Twitter and Craft Services.
And we're going to open a Truth Social account.
You're looking at a guy who's never heard of that. Is that a thing?
That's like Trump's Twitter, basically.
Oh, I gotta get on there ASAP.
Yeah,
ASAP.
we've not really had much success with the podcast financially, and I'm kind of thinking at a hard alt-right turn if we just sort of go that way. Like, we might
by
get
default,
some cash.
Our film podcast, just sort of the nature of Hollywood, our own personalities, maybe. I think we've been a little left-leaning historically. And just if history speaks for itself, we haven't struck it big time yet. And so I think we need to take a big right turn.
Yeah.
And go into truth.net or whatever you're talking about.
Our next movies are going to be Reagan, Sound of Freedom, Harold and the Purple Crayon.
Hey, we gotta finish Twisters first. Then we'll do that right-wing stuff. Then we'll do like Birth of a Nation.
Ooh.
And then we'll do Harold and the Purple Crayon.
Okay. Well, I look forward to it.
Then Star Wars Rogue One. Then Solo a Star Wars Story.
Well, we can't forget Solo a Star Wars Story. I mean,
and then we'll do If. Then we'll do Despicable Me 4. We already had like an outro joke where we joked about doing Despicable Me 4.
Oh, yeah, we did. I forgot about that.
Long-term listeners might remember.
You do 195 episodes, and it's sort of like they all sort of meld like together.
All your Despicable Me 4 jokes just start to blend together, because for which they are so abundant.
All right, guys, we'll see you next week.